Welcome to Podcast Marketing Secrets. I'm your host, Al Morentin. In this episode, I'm covering stage 2 of how to launch a successful video or audio podcast. Having the proper hardware and software is crucial to having a seamless experience and producing a beneficial and consistent result with your podcast episodes, which is typically to grow your community and get more clients. Let's get into the hardware and software that you need for creating a successful and enjoyable podcast show. When discussing the tech setup for a successful podcast, either audio or video, we talk about the hardware and the software. With the hardware, it's like the computer, the microphone, and the camera. And with the software, you go over production, post production, hosting, and all these other things. We'll start off with the hardware. And first up is the computer. I don't see that discussed too much, like the kind of computer that you use for your recording and getting the episode up onto the internet and all of these things. And it's very, very important. It's the hub or the brain that processes everything. So number one, you need a very good processor. I use PC and Intel processors. So you want to have, as far as like an Intel processor, you want to have an i7, possibly an i9, which is higher end. You do not want to have an i3 or an i5 because it won't have the proper capabilities, and there may be glitches because of that. You might be thinking it's your internet connection, but it's a lot of times if you have a lower end processor, then it could be because of the processor itself. It can't handle the capabilities needed for video and audio. Okay. So next up is the video card. If you're doing a video podcast, which is what I highly recommend. But the video card, you need to have a separate video card. The processors typically have video, inside of them, video capabilities. But having a separate video card allows the processor to just do the processing and without processing video. And then the separate video card, having a high-end one with a good processor in it as well, allows for seamless video. And what I like to use are gaming computers as opposed to business computers, because a gaming computer, a really good gaming computer, will have a good processor built in, and then it'll have a really good video card, because gamers don't like to have glitches when they're playing their games, especially if they're competing against someone else. So I will always opt for a gaming computer over a business computer. Okay. So as far as internet connections, you want to have like a port on your computer for Ethernet, so you could hardwire in if possible. And then on the Wi-Fi side, I choose to get the highest level package that the internet service provider gives to you. And so it just takes away the worry about having glitches. And oftentimes on the software side, we'll get into that. You could record, directly from the computer, and depending on the software that you use, etc. But having a Ethernet connection and then having a high-end Wi-Fi package from your internet service provider is key to having, an enjoyable experience with your podcast recordings. Okay. So next up is the microphone. So you want to keep it simple at first. When you're first starting out, you don't want to spend a lot of money on all the hardwares and softwares, etc., when it's not absolutely necessary. If you're just starting out, like so you want to make sure that you're going to be doing this for the long haul, and you can get the more expensive stuff, down the road. You want to spend the money on the computer and then just get good enough for the microphone and the camera. So keep it simple. Things are changing all the time. So it's oftentimes good to go on to Amazon or YouTube and type in like best microphone for creators, and you'll get a bunch of, options coming up. Look for the one that is mentioned the most and has like crazy amounts of awesome reviews, and you could go with that one. There's the Yeti is, good. I use a Samsung, which is this right here, and it's similar to a Yeti. I like it a little better, and they're generally about $100 to $150, depending on if they're on sale or not. Okay. There's also like Rode microphones and etc. that cost between $100 $150 that are good for creators and have really good quality. And then another option is headphones. Oftentimes, if you're doing a guest recording, like you're interviewing somebody, then you want to wear headphones so the person that you're interviewing, their voice doesn't interfere with your recording of your voice. So I have simple Logitech headphones. They cost about $30. I bought two sets just, in case one goes out, but they both work, a couple years later after I bought them, and they work, very, very well. And again, they keep out the guest interviewee's voice, from disrupting your audio recording. And then it has like a microphone, built into it, and it works just fine. And again, it's only $30. So if, cost is an issue, I would go with that. And there's also the computer. Okay. So the computer, if you listen to the first step, then you get a really good computer. It will typically have a good microphone built into it, especially these days. Okay. So getting into the camera that I use, the external camera is the Sony ZV-1, and it's a camera that was created for creators. Okay, so what that means is it has streaming capabilities built into it. It's a really nice computer. It cost about $1,000 when I bought it a year or two ago, and I think it's about $750 to $800 now. As time goes on, the price goes down a little bit. So that's super cool for people that are buying it nowadays. But it's a really good camera, and it has streaming capabilities built into it. So if you don't have that, if you have like a really nice camera, Canon, Sony, whatever, then you're typically, in order for it to communicate with the computer, then you'll have to have something like an Elgato or something that'll enable you to stream with it. Okay. So if you're doing a recording with somebody and you're using some really nice software to have a good experience, or a number of other issues, that may cause you to have your camera communicate with your computer, then you're going to have to buy an external source like an Elgato, which can cost a couple $100, a few $100, and it's an extra added expense. The Sony ZV-1 has that built in, so you just turn the camera on, go in there, click on streaming, and you're good to go. Okay, and we'll get into why you would need that when we get into the software section. Okay, so you can go on to Amazon, search for best computer for creators, and see what's available today, because like you said, technology is always changing, and you could look for different price points, etc. Another option is to just use the camera on your computer. So like as mentioned, you get the nice high-end computer, spend the money on that, and then it'll typically come with a really good camera these days. And I'm actually using the camera on my computer right now, and it's working just fine. And I actually use that more than I use the external camera because it's just easier. Okay. And then as far as tripods and all that kind of stuff, I ended up getting mine for free because I had friends that, they bought their stuff and they didn't end up going, sticking with the podcast or with the video YouTube channel or whatever. And they just gave them to me because it's just taking up space at their house. You could also go on like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, etc., and get a tripod really, inexpensively. You don't have to spend, $100 or more dollars. You can get them for like $20, when someone else spent $100 for them, right? By going to Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or whatever's available where you live. Okay. So that's basically it for the hardware. The computer, the microphone, and the camera that gets you in the game. All right. So as far as software is concerned, then we talk about production, of the actual, recording and all the different things that go into that. Post production, which is like the editing portion of it. The hosting, like where the audio and video episode is going to live online. And then we get into like workflows, like the guest workflow, how you reach out and follow up, etc. And then the recording workflow, you want to have a workflow for that, so you're not worried about, hey, did I do this, did I do that, etc. And then the video audio players that the episodes are going to be streamed on, or where they live when you put them onto the hosting platforms, okay, or onto your website or whatever. Okay, so we'll start off with the production. So you want to have the recording capabilities. I like to use a StreamYard. Okay, so what's popular right now for podcasts is Squadcast and Riverside. Okay, so I prefer StreamYard over those because I just understand how to use it better. I was using it before I started podcasting, just for webinars and all these different things. So I really understand how to use it, and it has a lot of capabilities built into it. It automatically strips video and the audio from the video, so you have the video audio together, and then it strips the audio, so you could just upload it to your audio podcast hosting platform with ease, and you could edit it, whatever, with ease as well. All right. So the reason you would need this software, and it's a streaming software that lives online, and that's also why you would have to have for your camera the streaming capabilities. And my ZV-1 has that built in, and obviously if you're using the camera on your laptop, then it's just that has that capability built into it as well. That's why I like to use it also. All right. But if you have a guest, or you're sharing your screen, or sharing PDFs or anything like that, then you're going to be using some software, and it's going to be an online software like StreamYard or Squadcast or Riverside. Any of those are fine because they do the video and audio. I don't know if Squadcast does. I believe it does, or I know that Riverside does, and then StreamYard does as well. And you could do some really neat stuff, and make it look, really awesome, as opposed to just trying to piece stuff together, from recordings remotely and all this kind of stuff. Just makes your life easier to use these video streaming platforms to record with. Okay. So after the production part, then you get into the post-production, and the software that you're going to use basically to edit the video and audio. So if you're experienced, then you could use things like Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, DaVinci. These are software that more experienced editors will use. Like our editor uses Premiere Pro. But if I do my own editing, then I use something else. Okay, so there's simpler ones that people use, that do their own editing, and one that's really popular these days is the Script. It's pretty easy to use, and people love it. There's many people that use it in the podcast world and in the YouTube channel world. CapCut is super popular these days. It's like ultra popular. And one of the reasons being is that it's free. Okay. Most of them are fairly inexpensive, but CapCut is free, and it has all the capabilities built into it. So it's pretty awesome. What I personally use, it's called Veed, with a V, VEED. And it works for me. It's intuitive for me, and it's the easiest for me to use. But any of them are fine, these days. So after you talk about the editing, then the post production, then you go into the hosting platform, like where your podcast is actually gonna live. The final product. So there's things like for the audio of the podcast. Buzzsprout is popular, super popular. I've used that in the past. Podbean is also super popular. You just have to look at the capabilities of each and decide which one has most of the capabilities that you're going to use. And then what I use right now is one called Captivate, because it's more for marketers and things like that. It has the marketing capabilities, SEO capabilities. It's a little bit more technical, but I've been in the digital marketing space since 2014, actually since 2006 for my own business, but for 2014 helping people, with their marketing for their businesses. And so I'm really good at the digital marketing, the SEO side, and I understand the value of the components that Captivate offers. Others might not understand, they might not utilize it, and they'd be better suited for Buzzsprout and Podbean. Okay, or one of the many others. Those are just the two that I know of, and that I know that work really, really well. Okay, so after the production, post-production, and hosting, then you get into workflows and making sure that you have a successful podcast episode and recording. Okay, so one of them is if you're doing a guest podcast, you don't have to have guests. It could just be you giving out information, or you and a co-host, etc. But oftentimes a podcast will be an interview based, or a mix of the two, where you do interviews sometimes and then you do your own stuff on other times. Okay. So if you are reaching out to guests, then you have a workflow for that to make sure that everything that needs to be done, or that should be done, is done. Okay. So first, there's the reach out, and the initial reach out that you have. And then they oftentimes don't answer back when you ask them if they would like to be on your podcast. Then there's a follow-up process. And then once they do say yes, then what do you send to them? What information do you send to them to help them prepare for the interview? And then what do you ask for? Do you ask for headshots, logo, and other things that may be beneficial for you to have, and to make them look the best on your episode? Okay. And then after the actual episode's done, there might be things like a thank you email, and then asking for a guest referral, like, hey, you did awesome. Do you know anybody else that may be a good fit for, as a guest on my podcast, etc. And it helps you to get more people, because people often will give you one or two names. And then the process that you use to ask them to actually share the episode, because that doesn't happen automatically. People think that, oh yeah, they're on the you send them the link and they watched it and they're, hey, thank you so much, but they don't end up sharing it because that takes a little bit of extra work. So having a process to actually get them to share the episode is crucial, because it'll increase the views, and it'll increase the subscriber rate that you have for on YouTube or on any of the other platforms, such as Apple or Spotify, etc. Okay, and so that finishes up the guest workflow, and then you go into the recording workflow. So in order to have a good experience with that, you want to make sure that you have like a checklist for the recording day. Okay. And even leading up to the recording day, but especially for the recording day, so you're not wondering if you did, certain things like click the record button or something like that. So you have a checklist, and it'll have things, like, do you have all the hardware and everything else set up? Is your phone off? Remember to smile, remember to press record, all of these different things, test the microphone. There's a number of different steps that need to be taken, before you actually record the podcast on the recording day. And then, there's the environment that you record in, so is it a quiet space, an uninterrupted space, etc. And then the hardware and software that you're going to use, is that all, broken or utilized properly, etc. And then does the guest have a link? Is the guest confirmed? Have you sent reminders? And as we said, press record, smile, and all that good stuff. All right. So after all of that's done, with the workflows, et cetera, then you talk about the video and audio players. Okay. So that has to do with, how the finished product is going to live online. Okay. So typically, you're going to have your video podcast on YouTube, and it could be on your website, etc. Whether it's a dedicated website just for the podcast, or a page on your existing website, or even just on your blog. How are you going to get the recordings on there, the video and the audio? So you need to have video and audio players, and typically, like Buzzsprout and Captivate, they have audio players that are that they provide, and you can customize, to look the way you want, and those are generally fine. You can get others, but that's where I would use to get the audio, because it's just very, very simple. And then as far as the video, you could do YouTube, Vimeo, Wistia. That's a more private version, as opposed to YouTube and Vimeo. But I personally like to use YouTube, because when people watch it, then it'll increase your views on your channel, and that's a positive thing. Okay, and so those are just decisions that need to be made right now. You don't have to actually be worrying about doing these things. This stage 2 is more of a just honing down exactly those decisions of what you're going to use and how you're going to use them, and then along the way you start populating that stuff into your into your workflows, actually purchasing the hardware, getting the software set up, etc. But at first, you just need to make the decisions on what's going to be utilized to have the most successful podcast that you can, that actually has a positive effect for your business. Okay, because remember, we're not just trying to be fancy and have a podcast and say, "Look at me, I have a podcast and I have a YouTube channel." You actually want it to have a result, a beneficial result for your business, your bottom line, and your bank account. In conclusion, having the proper hardware and software set up for recording, editing, and hosting is crucial for creating a successful and enjoyable podcast show. Remember to subscribe to Podcast Marketing Secrets on YouTube, Apple, or your favorite podcast listening platform to stay updated with the latest insights and strategies. You can also find us on YouTube and IG at The Podcast Marketer. This is Al Morentin with Podcast Marketing Secrets and Video Podcast Pros signing off. See you on the next episode.